That's what I learned the day I discovered the truth. The truth about my best friend, my husband, and the life I thought I had built so carefully, so faithfully. People say heartbreak comes suddenly, like lightning splitting the sky in two. But mine came slowly, like a hairline crack in a favorite porcelain cup. You don't see it at first. You keep sipping from it, you keep smiling, and one quiet morning, it shatters in your hands. I remember that morning clearly. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon toast and brewed coffee. My husband, Daniel, sat at the table, flipping through the newspaper, glasses hanging low on his nose like always. The sunlight came in through the window just right, hitting the dust in the air and making it sparkle. It was one of those peaceful mornings, the kind you take for granted because you think peace is something guaranteed. And then the doorbell rang. Caroline. That beautiful, bright-eyed girl with a smile that could lift a room. My friend. My second daughter, or so I thought. She stepped in with the cold winter air behind her, cheeks rosy, eyes warm. I felt the usual rush of happiness I always felt seeing her. If I had known then what she was hiding, what they were hiding, I don't know if I would have hugged her so tightly. But back then, ignorance still felt like warmth. Before everything collapsed, life was simple. I'd raised 2 children, my son, Michael, and my daughter, Elaine. And after years of focusing on the kids, I finally had time to reconnect with myself. I picked up gardening again, started volunteering at the library, and began attending community workshops, the kind with motivational speakers and too many inspirational quotes on the walls. That's where I met her. Caroline. She was sitting alone, writing in a small brown journal. I noticed her first because she looked so out of place among the retirees and newly divorced moms trying to rebuild their lives. At first glance, she seemed 22, 23 maybe, young and hopeful and soft, but her eyes had a sadness, like life had already shown its teeth. "Mind if I sit here?" I had asked her that day. She smiled, that beautiful smile, and nodded. We talked through the whole session, about books and disappointment and starting over. It felt natural, comfortable, like meeting someone you didn't realize you already knew. I had lived long enough to understand that real friendships, the rare, pure ones, don't arrive often, especially not at my age. So I held on to her. I didn't know then that some people come into your life not to stay, but to teach painful lessons you never asked for. My son met her a year later. He came home from college for a long weekend, and I had invited Caroline for dinner. She brought over a pecan pie, still warm, wrapped in foil, and smelling like holidays past. The moment Michael walked in and saw her, I recognized something in his eyes. Interest, curiosity, that quick spark that lights up a young man's face before he can hide it. "Mom," he whispered in the kitchen later, trying to be casual. "Who is she?" I laughed. "A friend. Don't you dare give me that look." I didn't give a look. You absolutely did. We both smiled. It felt innocent then, even sweet. Nothing about that night suggested the storm coming. Nothing suggested jealousy or betrayal or broken vows. Nothing warned me that I was handing my son, my sweet boy, into the arms of someone who was already entangled in mine in a different way entirely. Weeks passed, then months. Suddenly, she and Michael were inseparable. Coffee dates turned into dinners, dinners turned into weekends together, and before I knew it, they were standing at my doorway, hand in hand, announcing they were officially dating. I remember hugging them both, tears in my eyes, feeling lucky, blessed even. Because what mother wouldn't be thrilled? Your son falling in love with someone you already cherish. It felt like fate had handed me a gift. My husband, Daniel, was quiet about it first. He had that polite half smile he always wore when he wasn't sure how to react. Now, looking back, I wonder if that expression wasn't surprise, but recognition. If his silence wasn't uncertainty, but memory. I wonder if even then she and Daniel shared some secret look, some quiet understanding I mistook as shyness. But back then, everything still felt right. Life became laughter and dinners and shared inside jokes. We had Sunday brunches, movie nights, evenings where Caroline and I sat at the table with tea while Daniel washed the dishes. I remember thinking how lucky I was. A husband who helped in the kitchen, a son in love, a friend who felt like family. Sometimes Caroline stayed late. Sometimes Daniel offered to drive her home if it was raining or I was tired. I encouraged it. I trusted them both. Trust, I learned later, is a fragile thing. More fragile than blown glass ornaments and promises spoken in church aisles. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a note tucked in the pocket of one of Daniel's shirts. Just a tiny folded scrap of paper. I thought it was a shopping list. It wasn't. It was a name. C. Just a single letter, written in soft cursive. And beneath it, a heart. I stared at it for a long moment, confused. Then I laughed at myself, quietly, nervously, the way you do when your brain starts to nudge you toward a place your heart isn't ready to go. It was nothing, I told myself. A mistake, a coincidence. Maybe he wrote it reminding himself to get something for Christmas. Maybe it meant coffee. Maybe I was silly even to think otherwise. I tucked the note back where I found it and shook it off. Because love, real love, makes you blind to shadows. And I loved them both. Her like a daughter, him like a partner for life. If only love was enough to stop betrayal from blooming in the quiet corners we refuse to inspect. I remember telling myself not to overthink. After all, I'd been married to Daniel for nearly 30 years. You don't throw suspicion at a man you've built a life with over a scribbled C and a little doodled heart. Love has a way of convincing you that doubt is disrespect, that loyalty means silence. So I kept quiet. Life went on. Breakfasts, chores, phone calls from my daughter checking in from 3 states away, and Caroline, always Caroline, sitting at my kitchen counter, chin resting in her palm, laughing with me about recipes or work or life's silly little disappointments. If I had to describe her presence then, I'd say she felt like morning sunlight. Warm, welcome, steady, and like sunlight, I didn't realize how much I depended on her until everything turned cold. A few weeks after I found the note, I noticed something else. Daniel began dressing better. Now, that may sound harmless, even sweet. A husband who starts paying attention to his appearance again, most wives would smile. But after years of soft cotton shirts and worn-in slippers, suddenly seeing freshly pressed shirts, cologne in the mornings, and hair neatly combed felt odd. It wasn't drastic, but it was deliberate. Once, as he adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, I joked, lightly, lovingly, "Who are you trying to impress?" He smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Just trying to take better care of myself," he murmured, and then he brushed past me, grabbing his keys. When the door clicked shut behind him, something inside me shifted. The kind of tiny shift you barely notice until it grows into an ache. Still, I buried the feeling. Buried it under laundry and grocery runs and long phone calls with my daughter. Buried it under my faith in the life I believed I had built. Denial isn't foolishness. It's survival sometimes. One evening, Caroline arrived unexpectedly. I opened the door to find her standing there, in a soft gray coat, cheeks rosy from the wind. There was a nervous energy in her. Not obvious to anyone else maybe, but I'd come to know the rhythm of her moods. This wasn't her breezy, cheerful self. It was as though she had something to say and didn't know how to say it. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked, stepping aside. She nodded, too quickly. "Just needed company." We sat in the kitchen, sipping chamomile tea. The house was quiet. Daniel wasn't home. He'd texted earlier saying he was running late from work. I didn't think much of it then. Those messages had become routine. Caroline stared into her mug, stirring honey into it, even though she never took honey. "Did something happen?" I finally asked. Her eyes lifted to mine. There was something there. Guilt? Grief? Fear? I couldn't tell. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Life is complicated sometimes," she whispered. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Oh, darling, I know, and you don't ever have to go through things alone." She squeezed my hand, hard, almost desperate, then quickly let go, wiping her eyes. I thought she was struggling with commitment, or maybe something from her past resurfacing. She'd once mentioned a difficult childhood. Nothing detailed, just shadows around the edges of her sentences. I never imagined the complication she meant included me. Suspicion is strange. It doesn't arrive like a shout. It creeps in like a whisper. Quiet, persistent, unsettling. The next clue was almost laughably small. A mug. My favorite floral mug, chipped on the handle, one I used every morning. I found it in the sink one evening. Lipstick smudged along the rim. But not my lipstick. This was a soft, peachy shade I'd seen Caroline wear. I frowned. She always drank from the tall glass cups, never mugs. She used to joke that mugs felt cozy in the wrong way, whatever that meant. But there it was. My mug, her lipstick, my kitchen. I stood there staring at it, sponge in my hand, heart thumping against my ribs. Logic tried to soothe me. Maybe she'd grabbed it absent-mindedly. Maybe she felt safe enough here to forget her preferences. But the crack widened. Worse still, Daniel walked in that moment. He saw me standing by the sink, staring at the mug. He paused, just a breath too long, and his expression shifted, just slightly. It wasn't guilt exactly, more like alarm, the way a person freezes when they don't yet know what you know. "What's wrong?" he asked casually. I forced a smile, too wide, too quick. "Nothing, just thinking I should replace some of these old mugs." He nodded, relief washing over him, so subtle most wives would have missed. But when you've shared decades with someone, you see everything. I washed the mug, I set it back in the cabinet, and that night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when my home started feeling unfamiliar. One Saturday morning, not long after, Caroline offered to help me reorganize the hall closet. Such a small thing, tiny gesture of friendship, but life-changing moments often hide in ordinary tasks. We stood shoulder to shoulder, pulling out scarves and old coats, laughing about fashion mistakes, reminiscing about winters past. It felt normal again, comfortable even, and for a few fleeting minutes, I believed everything was okay. Believed I was just overthinking. Believed love made people anxious, not betrayal. Then her phone buzzed on the hall table. A message preview lit the screen. Just a few words, just enough. "I miss you too." The sender's name? Daniel M. I didn't react right away. I couldn't. My breath froze, like my ribs had turned to stone around my lungs. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, like the walls were pushing in. Caroline reached for her phone quickly, too quickly, pressing the screen to her chest before I could see more. I stared at her. She stared at the closet floor. Silence stretched, thick, suffocating, full of truth I couldn't ignore anymore. My voice, when it came, felt unfamiliar, quiet, cold, steady. "Caroline, why is my husband texting you that?" She didn't answer. But sometimes silence is louder than confession. My heart didn't break then. not yet. It just slipped. Like someone pulled the ground from beneath me, piece by piece. And in that suspended second, I understood something. Betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet enough to hear your own heartbreak echo.
Of course. Continuing naturally from where the last stanza left off, and so we walk, in rhythm bold, with stories carved in dust and gold. No tyrant's claim, no master's line can cage a will by right divine. Through famine's ache and winter's sting, we rise, a chorus thundering. For every life, a sacred spark, unbowed by fear, unshamed by dark. Let kings proclaim their holy right, yet justice wakes and truth ignites. For thrones may crack and crowns may rust, but freedom blooms from soil and dust. So raise the banner, red or green, for tyrants fall where hope has been. The earth remembers, nations learn, no borrowed crown makes rule a turn. We stand as one in humble pride, no god nor crown at tyrant's side. Till chains are none and hearts are free, this is the law, equality.